Hello, I'm Daniela Alfer, and I oversee marketing at IT Central Station. We're pleased to have our panelists, Liz Blackman from Worksoft and Gael Schmid from Commvault. Liz Blackman is Worksoft's Vice President of Marketing, and Gael Schmid manages EMEA digital marketing for Commvault. Our moderator is my coworker, Jeff Yeger, who heads IT Central Station's customer success. I'll be on the chat, so please reach out with any questions or comments because we'll have a short Q&A session at the end. Jeff, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Daniela. Welcome, everybody, to anything you can say, your customers can say better. Or in other words, what you have to say about your product is just not as important as the people who actually use it. And so during this panel, we're going to talk about what does it actually mean to listen to customers and why hearing their real experiences is so crucial to running your business. And maybe it seems like an obvious concept. I know everybody's talking about voice of customers, and with no customers, you don't actually have a business. But you want to build products and services that are going to keep them coming back. And what does voice of customer mean? It's listening on a company scale, right? It's more of a philosophy where every team and every function at your company needs to hear that voice if they're going to be sure they're on the right track, to make sure that what they're doing every day is actually going to make being your customer the best thing in the world. Third-party voice of customer content. So in our case, it's user reviews. I think they're a particularly important source for that because at the end of the day, they're talking about you, but not directly to you, which means that they're going to be much more open and much more honest than they would usually be. And that's when you really want to listen. So we're going to talk about voice of customer from two angles. We're going to talk a little bit more about the overall idea of it, what's exciting about it, what makes it so important, and then we'll get into some of the practical things that Liz and Gael have done to take advantage of that really important feedback. So what we'll start with is Liz and Gael. They'll introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right in. Liz, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I'm Liz Blackman. As you mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Worksoft. Worksoft is an automation platform company helping some of the largest companies in the world with their end-to-end application automation. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Amazing. So excited you're here. Gael, what about you?
Hi, so I'm Gael Schmid, and I'm the Senior Manager for Digital Marketing. And I'm part of a global team, a global digital marketing team. And I work for Commvault. So this is a company that's been around for 25 years now. And basically we're, the leader in backup and recovery and all sorts of solutions for data protection. And just our ultimate goal is to liberate your data and allow you to do just amazing things with them, basically.
Fantastic. So when I asked the team, who do I have to have on this panel, your names came up first. And the reason was really simple, right? Every business out there, and this is not specific necessarily just to technology companies, but any company that has a customer, which I assume is every single one in the world, they talk about voice of customer, right? They talk about listening. They talk about how they're going to make decisions based on what customers have to say about them. Not many people actually do it, but you guys do, which is why I'm excited to have you, because I think there's so many things that our audience is going to be able to learn from you about actually taking action. So let's get started with maybe a broader question around, as a marketer, what really excites you about the voice of customer? What is it that you look at that as somebody who's involved in content, who's involved in feedback loops at your company, who's involved in action? And you look at that and what really gets you going. So Liz, maybe you could start.
Sure. So one of the things that excites me about the voice of the customer is to understand, the myriad of ways that they're using our products, to understand how they've been successful, to understand to your point, nobody can say better than somebody who's actually used it. The authenticity that comes with the customer review. You can see an analyst review, you can see some of those things, but there's nothing that's more powerful than a person who's actually been in the trenches and used and evaluated it. So the authenticity is probably the most exciting part to me, because I can see and validate that what they're doing, how they're being successful, how to use it, and how we need to approach it going forward, even from a marketing standpoint, or from a customer success standpoint, or from a sales standpoint. So that's probably, I guess, that's the most exciting thing for me that comes to top of mind.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Gael, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, just from the digital perspective, because that's pretty much the world I'm in, on a daily basis. I think it's quite interesting to collect all these insights from our customers, all the different touch points that we now have, to talk with them, and to have this ability to then use it along the customer journey. But also, one thing that is quite a paradox is, of course, we have a lot of data, and of course, we have a lot of those touch points and everything, but we always have to have the customer in mind, and that's not only a digital thing, right? So I've been in meetings where people would actually put like a fake customer at the table, or this kind of stuff, and this kind of thing gets me excited as well, because I like this way of putting the customer as a real stakeholder in the room, and especially in marketing, right? We have so many priorities that we have to deal with on a daily basis, because we have this touch points, proof points all the time. And then we also have to, not to kid ourselves, but have somebody who's going to be the customer advocate. That's kind of my
Absolutely.
my thing.
It's almost silly to think that anything gets done at a company where you're not thinking about the customer. What's the point? Right? If they're not going to take advantage of it and it's not going to improve their lives, why are you doing it? And so I you guys particularly are marketers. Obviously, this is true across the organization. We'll get into some of those examples. But as a marketer, you guys are tasked with being the face of the company. You guys are out there sort of, you said it, in the trenches, informing people about your product, teaching them about what it could do for them. And that's always going to be from your perspective. And sometimes it can lead to a little bit of a gap, or almost a gap in reality, if you will, between what you guys are pushing about your product, the features you think are important, the services you're offering, sort of the gap between that and what people, in the field are actually using, and what they're interested in, and what they're talking about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on taking voice of customer content and using it to sort of bridge that gap as a marketer. Gael, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, that's like also some anecdotes that we talked about when we were organizing this panel, right? So I think it's quite funny how sometimes you can just bring in just one single review to a meeting, and it's like this campaign meeting, this campaign brief meeting, and we create, like, for example, key message documents, right? And you have to include in there some proof points, right? And then you just come in with like just a quote of a customer that you got from a site, from a peer review site, and then all of a sudden, what you just wrote before just actually makes sense, right? Because you have to look at the persona, you have to look at why you're doing this, and all the product aspect. But then if you have this quote at the end, then it all makes sense for the entire team. So those are kind of those building blocks for teams, right? So the customer can just kind of approve what you're doing, right? It's customer approved, this kind of stuff. So that's how it's useful.
It's a
Absolutely.
great, yeah, I'll agree. I think one of the primary ways that we use our customer reviews is it's a great validation piece. It's a great validation piece to validate, personas, persona messaging, what matters. It's a great way to validate how someone is using it across industries, as we talked about before. You can see, what might be important from one industry is not the thing that's highlighted across another one. You can also validate the things that are industry agnostic. So something that's working for one industry is truly going to work across industries. So those are just a few of the ways. And then to your point too about using it as a proof point and validation, it's fantastic. They're fantastic starting points for longer case studies where you can take these proof points and build a framework for a case study, and then possibly add in qualitative later. So there's just myriads of ways that they're just powerful and useful tools. And then, not just for validation from the messaging standpoint, but also for sales validation. They're great tools to take into if you are going into somebody who wants industry. So many times we find people who are needing industry specific information. How to show me a customer where it's happening in this particular area because that's what I'm interested in. So we use them as numerous occasions to validate that what we're doing, we've done at another company and it's working, and here's how, and here's what they're using it for. Because it's so much powerful to hear how the customer is using it versus, to your point, we say the product does this, okay, fine, but let me hear the customer say that the product does that, and then we can talk.
100%. Just even validating the things that you think
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I love the most about customer feedback is, obviously, you never know what you're going to get, but you never know what you're going to get across the spectrum. You guys may not actually have an industry focus. And then suddenly you read your voice of customer content, you read your reviews, you look at your case studies across the industries that you happen to sell into, and you realize, hey, wait a minute, I need to be segmenting here. One industry is using it radically different than another. And if I'm marketing sort of broadly, and I'm sort of blanket marketing across my customer base, and that's also going to mean internally that I'm blanket improving my product across my entire customer base. I'm not optimizing for my customer's experience. And you get amazing insights into how people are actually using your product and what you can do for them. So yeah, amazing. Thank you guys for the feedback. And we spoke a little bit about, Worksoft and Commvault are obviously industry leaders, obviously have top tier customers, and it's not an accident, right? You guys have been around for a long, long time, and you've been excellent for a long, long time. And I'd love to hear how voice of customer for you guys is helping you stay sort of top of market, helping you stay relevant as sort of the fastest digital transformation we've ever seen is happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Liz, maybe you could share.
Absolutely, and especially with COVID and the way that has sped digital transformation efforts. I can't remember what the exact number is, but it was massive. And for us, as an automation solution, we're now number one on every CIO's, list of directives is how do I automate? How do I do more with less? And not only that, but because everything, to your point earlier, was based on the digital experience, the end user experience. How do I do all of that? And then also ensure that I've got flawless delivery, because now, in this digital age, to your point, they can go to another vendor. So I think one of the ways that we use customer reviews is to showcase, that we are still the market leader in automation for enterprise applications. And it's the thorough reviews, like the ones that we receive from IT Central Station, that are really the most powerful, in my opinion. And the reason is because it's showing the breadth and the depth that they're using it. And these are large enterprise, large enterprises. So they need validation. They need, they're evaluating whether or not it's gonna work in their environment, because the risk is very high. So the customer reviews are extremely powerful way that we showcase that, we are the continued market leader for enterprise application. And it's another way that in the future, as we've evolved over the last 18 months, that I see us intending to use it as a way of validating the evolution of our platform. and how customers are taking advantage of all of the innovation that we've been going through over this journey that we've been on for the last 2 years. This idea of closed loop automation, where you can automate, from process intelligence through testing and into RPA. So we'll intend to use, our customer reviews later to really kind of help people understand how they're applying that closed loop automation into their businesses to kind of future-proof them from further disruption.
Absolutely. And everyone's talking about moving to the enterprise. Everybody knows, what the hottest market is. And, you got to look at it from the perspective of the buyer. If I'm going to spend 6, 7, 8 figures on a product, I'm not going to do it because you tell me it's great.
Yep.
I'm going to do it despite that. I'm going to go and find out that people already spent that money, and I'm going to do what they said. And it's becoming even more potent, I think, when we look at SaaS in general. It's so easy to swap products now. Obviously, in the enterprise, it's a little bit more difficult. A company gets their claws in you. But when we're working on subscriptions, we're working on things with a sort of defined time frame for when I'm done with your product. It becomes even more crucial to make sure that my experience was the best one possible.
Well, and the higher the price tag or the higher the price point for whatever solution is you're buying, then the more the higher the number of reviews that are read. Because to your point, you've got to make sure if you're making that kind of a call, you've got to make sure that it's going to work with your existing systems and beyond too.
Yeah, my reputation's on the line.
Yeah,
Gael, I'd love to hear from you. I went on a little.
I think you're bringing a point, a theme, around protection, and in protection we know our stuff. So basically, it's just to talk about also the time we're in, right? So for data protection, obviously, it's a time where people are really looking at us as a real partner, right? And our customers rely on us heavily, and they expect from us, like guidance and like really be able to help them and recommend solutions, right? So we've been in a situation lately where lots of ransomware are happening, this kind of stuff. So I think the reason why we've been also customer focused is we solve a lot of customer challenges. So we really have to open our ears, right? So when it's really, the customer is really in a tough spot, you are also in a tough spot, and you share that pressure, right? And I guess, and the way we're built as Commvault, our support team really takes that load as well, right? So we have this idea of partnering. And because of that, we also implemented a lot of features, I believe, that are coming from this feedback, from the fact of having these people on the line and they don't have, they didn't have like the right connector, right? So we built the connector, or the data set was not working properly. So we built an infrastructure that was better for that, So I think a lot of companies, whether they're SaaS or not SaaS, are going to be co-creating more and more, right? And that's the whole thing about our own digital transformation, right? And that's the whole thing. We sell digital transformation, but we'd better be digital transformation champions, right? Exactly. And so one really cool and amazing thing that Commvault has been able to create is we've been able to create our own SaaS solution. We took a group of people from our company and we created an entire organization called Metallic within Commvault. So we challenge ourselves, right, within our own company, right, because that's what customers want, and this is the kind of thing that you have to do and to be flexible at, right? And this comes also from the voice of the customer, from the voice of the industry, from the voice of your shareholders. And that's this outside-in approach that we have to apply on a regular basis, and that companies out there have to use. So that's that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And it's challenging. We're a 2,500 employees company, right? But everybody is working against this kind of goal, and they have customers in mind, but also the rest of the stakeholders as well.
I think that was the perfect segue. We've sort of spoken up until now about the general value of listening to your customers. Customer listening is a term I'm hearing more, and I love it. We've spoken about what it means for the industry, what it means as a marketer, but I'd love to talk more practically, right? What are some of the, I don't want to call them easy, but worthwhile things that you can do with customer feedback? And I could go on for an hour, but we'll pick a couple. So Gael, you specifically mentioned the fact that you went to your customers, you asked them what they think, and then you went off and not only developed features, you built out another business entirely based on what it is that the customers want. And I think that's one of the top use cases that we're seeing across the industry is, why does your roadmap need to be blind? Why do you have to do things based on what might be cool or might be interesting or your engineers feel like building? Why don't we do it based on what people will actually use, right? Why can't we stay in MVP phase when we have voice of customer feedback coming in consistently? So, Gael, we heard a little bit from you. Liz, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it means to use the voice of the customer to sort of define more go-to-market strategy.
Oh, absolutely. So, at Worksoft, it's an extremely customer-centric organization, and it is the voice of the customer that was one of the primary drivers for the transformational journey that we've been on for the last 2 years, taking our platform and turning it into where we came from, what we're known for. Our legacy is just the most robust automated testing solution in the market today for enterprises, large enterprises, and evolving into this larger offering, which offers it's testing and beyond. It's where the market is going. To having that true process understanding on the front end to inform and create what we consider truly intelligent automation. And one of the coolest ways that we got there was validating that, listening to the voice of the customer, who their biggest pain points was process understanding, not understanding what to automate because they didn't know what their processes looked like. And then how do you get the most, value out of that automation that you have? And then the ability to, the ones that, in particular, from a voice of the customer who were using us for RPA, and we didn't, we were learning from them that they were so confident in our automation that they were willing to execute in production, which speaks volumes about our product. But it speaks volumes too about the value that they were able to achieve. And we took that information and really tried to dive in deep. And our roadmap, it was an integral part of our roadmap, and understanding, okay, how can we now make this even more sound for you so you can get the most value possible? And it was our customers and the voice of our customers that drove that, that and then validating it against the market were the things that drove that forward and are continuing to drive it forward.
Amazing. Danielle is back, which means we've got a few minutes left. So I'll touch on a couple of quick things. So Liz, I think that's for me, maybe the coolest thing that's come out of this conversation is you learned that your customers are using your products in a way that you didn't know they were doing. Which is incredible, that they felt so confident in your product to actually sort of step outside the lines a little bit and do more with it. And then you guys saw that and you're like, okay, well, if we have to expand into another hot space, I guess we can. And so Gael, I'd love to hear, I think you had a similar experience where, you guys, your use case, your strong points, but you found customers doing things with your product that was sort of surprising, and I'm assuming pleasantly surprising to you guys.
Yeah, I mean the product and the platform that we sell is quite extensive, and of course there are numerous possibilities, right? So first of all we work with a large set of partners. Then we have customers from many different industries. And then obviously, they use our product for many types of things, right? But one other thing that we learned from these peer reviews is that we were doing really well, for example, in certain in certain industries, right? Specifically, right? So like in the pharma business, sometimes we discovered some of our customers through these peer reviews, just because we go through a network of partners and things like that. And then after a while, we started adding up all these different customers we had, and we found out that we were doing really well with them. And then we see that they have similar use cases, and some of these use cases are very specific to their industry, but we're not really a vertically focused organization. So it's something that we have to have in mind now, and that's the whole thing about this briefing that I was telling you about. Now you can kind of approve it with the customer and just say, hey, we're doing these kind of things in the biopharma business, in general. And so that's the kind of learning experience we have at times.
Fantastic. I think we just lost Liz for a second, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the last one, and we'll hope Liz comes back to give her part. So when we talk about a customer-centric business, obviously we're talking about sales. Obviously we're talking about how you market yourselves. But I think the true test of customer centricity is going to be support, right? How do we, customer comes to us, they've got an issue, they've got something they need help with. How are we going to respond to that? And obviously one of the great things you can learn from voice of customer, from reviews, is, well, how's our support doing? How do they rank our support? What do they think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on taking voice of customer, taking action on it when it comes to support within an organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's we had a use case with this. So I think we had this conversation about good or bad reviews, right? And how can you use it, right? And that's obviously when support comes in, right? So, imagine you have a bad review. What do you do? What do you do? How do you course correct something, right? So one thing that I really enjoyed about, working with you guys at IT Central Station, is sometimes I can just come in with some review, and then we kind of sit down and I have support, customer success management, I have social, I have all these various stakeholders together, and then something is not right, we kind of course correct it. So usually support is number one at this, right? They already know the customer, they can tell us what happened, they can tell us, how they're gonna fix it, and it's really motivating. It shows you how the engine is working, right? You have all these people who are willing to help and learn from what you're bringing in, right? So I've had situations like that where, within 5 hours the customer was called, and it's not always that easy, because you have to admit that some of these reviews are kind of anonymous. So you have to find yourself who the customer is behind this anonymous quote or review, right? So that's the kind of thing that support is always ready to help you with, right? That's what I really enjoy doing with them.
Tremendous. Liz, we lost you for a second. The system doesn't like you, but the question I asked was basically, when we talk about being a customer-centric business, when we talk about customer experiences, one of the main measures of that is going to be what they think about your support, right? When it comes down to it, when a customer needs help, how does that go? And I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences on listening to customers to look at support critically and make sure that you're where you want to be.
Yes. So going back to what I said earlier about the authenticity that comes with the customer review, it's not us saying how great we are. It's not a paid situation where they're kind of getting paid to kind of pick and highlight and position it. It is how they're truly using it and what their experience is truly like from end to end. And one of the ways that we did when we were evaluating, we had an initiative of ours to improve our already, stellar, I think, support and service levels. And one of the ways that we did, one of the methods that we used as part of our evaluation criteria were the voice of the customer reviews. We took each one of them and we looked for areas of improvement. Like I was saying earlier, a review that's 100% negative, I'm always suspicious of. But a review that's 100% positive, I'm also a little suspicious of. You want to see that somebody, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And one of the ways that we use reviews across platforms to validate, was to validate, the accuracy of the statements, and then also to pinpoint areas for improvement. Support was one of those. Service was one of those. Where we used them for a myriad of things. One of those things about those negative comments and how powerful they are is that they can prevent churn. They can also highlight an area where it could just be an education point for us. Because based on what the customer said, it's an opportunity for us to educate them. It's a possible configuration issue. It's a way to reach out and reconnect with the customer and truly show that you're a trusted advisor. So there's a myriad of ways that we use those, and one of those was to really pinpoint areas of improvement in support and service.
Amazing. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, that was it.
I would have kept listening. Amazing. So I'd love to very quickly recap, some of the points we touched. We talked about how voice of customer is not about marketing. It's not about product. It's not about any particular function. It's a company-wide philosophy where you make a decision that we're going to run our company in a way that being our customer is the best thing possible. Right? We talked about how listening to the customer gives you a reality check. It makes sure that the things you're focused on are the things that they care about. Right? We talked about, selling experiences and outcomes because every product works. It's about what makes your product the best one possible. We talked just now about how you can use voice of customer to make sure that support is kind of on point, that it's giving customers what you need, and if it's not, sort of being able to investigate that based on their feedback. We talked about, you both being well-known and, long-standing experts in, companies in the field, and that one of the ways that you guys stay on top is obviously listening to your customers. And that includes when you do your marketing, so that you're talking about the right things. That talks about your product roadmap to make sure you're developing the right features. We mentioned support. And then, we just talked in general about how it's almost antithetical to do anything at your company when you're not thinking about the customer first and foremost. So, thank you guys so much. What I really loved about the conversation was, you both have the ability, I think, to talk about this when it comes to the industry, when it comes to trends, when it comes to more thought leadership, and then you're both actively taking voice of customer and putting it to use within your organizations. And I think that's really the combination that people are going to learn from. So, Liz and Gael, thank you guys so much for coming.
Wait a minute, we've got two questions.
I was going to hand it back to you, I promise. Let's see the questions. What do we got?
All right, questions. Question to Gael. You mentioned having a fake customer at the table. Can you provide more details about that? And a question to Liz is about different types of voice of customer content, such as you mentioned detailed reviews at IT Central Station. What are the differences and how do you use them for different purposes?
All right, you want to shoot first, Liz?
Yeah,
Or?
Go ahead, Liz. I think you might be muted.
Are you muted? I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Gael. We'll let Liz
okay, so yeah, just for my question, it's just a little takeaway for some of the marketers who might watch us. There is this great book called The Experience Economy by Joe Pine, and one of the things is also the design thinking approach, and that's one of the things that I attended some of these workshops, they put you in a room and there's like a fake representation of somebody who is the customer, right? And you're
An
supposed to
actor,
build.
or it's just like a picture.
Yeah, it's a phony person, that like a massive picture, right? And
Okay.
it's standing there and it's next to you, right? And you're supposed to have this conversation with them, being, one of the stakeholder, and always ask them this kind of stuff. It's just it's a funny gesture, but there are some actual companies doing that, because otherwise you tend to forget them, when you make decisions. And there are lots of roles now of customer advocates within organizations, right? We have a great reference team at Commvault. We have a great customer success management team at Commvault. So, all these people, when they come into these meetings, they're like, hey, like Liz and I, we just, we were talking about this before, but the extreme reality check experience, right? So they have to be there to provide it, to say, hey, the real world. So,
Though ironically, they don't actually have a voice, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Liz, have you ever done that? Ever
All right, I
worked
seem to be off mute now.
Have you guys ever done trials or sort of a test with a fake customer?
This is not Liz's day.
Yeah, I think she dropped.
We'll give her another second. Otherwise, we'll ask her on our next call, and we'll send it out to all the participants.
Jeff, we should do that though. We should have like a picture of a customer in our meetings as well. I love it.
How about a real customer? We'll get Gael to come.
Yeah. So, you could even do that. You could actually invite a customer at every meeting.
100%. I'm actually love that idea. The next time we have a roadmap meeting, actually having a customer there. I mean, we'll sign an NDA, but still, I love that idea. Okay, so I don't think we'll get Liz back. So Gael, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure having you. And we'll say the same to Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody who came. I really appreciate it. Oh, Liz is back. Okay, Liz is back.
Okay.
All right, I'll see how fast I can answer that question.
Go for it.
We use it in a myriad of ways. We cross-check reviews across different platforms to validate, and they're all collected in different ways. Different platforms ask different questions, so we use it to try to get the most holistic or the most comprehensive picture we can. Another one of the ways, and we use that to build frameworks for case studies. And then once the framework is built, it's also relatively easy to go back to a customer and try to ask for some qualitative, ask for some additional metrics. It's built for them. It's not a laborious process. So it kind of helps you handle all that stuff on the front end. We use them in our sales kits quite often, especially by industry. We developed a template, and we take the reviews, especially the ones, as I mentioned before, the thorough ones, and we can plug and play into our, constructed, we call them kind of high-level case study templates that we can then envelop into the different campaigns that we run, and then also as part of sales enablement kits. The last one is when you use a review platform, allows you that they do the interview process for you, and it's you can have some sort of a video format or some sort of an audio collection. Then you kind of kill two birds with one stone. I think we get the the qualitative and the quantitative, and those are really powerful because then you can extract the customer quotes just immediately from the review itself. To use as part of blogs, as part of we use them quite often in our to validate proof points inside of our presentations, to update those proof points as well. If you have a quote that's outdated, but you're continuing to collect these voice of the customer reviews, it allows you to kind of go in and update that information with the information that you've gathered just from the review itself.
I think we could do a whole panel on just that topic of where you put quotes to amazing. So Liz, thank you for powering through. I appreciate it. Thank you, Gael, so much. And we hope to have you guys back.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
See
Thank
you.
you.
See you next time.
Bye.
And thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye.